All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Marketing Without Rules, the show where we celebrate people who exemplify the hunter mindset. They make moves, they color outside the lines, and they have found creative ways to channel the attention of their community into currency. This show is sponsored by Blue Crocus Solutions, a web design and SEO agency focused on helping home service companies. I am your host, Louis Vandervalk, and today I have the pleasure of chatting with Al Levi. Al, the 7-Power contractor, has a really cool story arc. After retiring from his family contracting business at the age of 48, I don't know how that's accurate because he doesn't look a day over 25. After doing that, Al began sharing.
Camera.
So after he retired from the contracting business, he began sharing his 7-Power system with other contractors throughout the US, Canada, and Australia so that they could learn to run their businesses with less stress and more success. His work has impacted numerous contractors across a dozen industries and more, I think. And his focus is now on putting his thinking online through the 7-Power Contractor Signature Operating Manual System and the Signature Staffing System, and his book, The 7-Power Contractor. Al, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for that long intro so I can save my voice.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we'll kill all the time for you. I gotta start by asking, how many people have bought bracelets that say "Do what Al says"?
Oh, that's I used to work with Ellen Rohr, and we're still friends, so it wasn't a bad breakup. To be clear, we are still BFFs. But Ellen met me decades ago. We were the forerunner of Nexstar together. It was C2000 at the time, and we became fast friends. Very different. Like it's all about X in personality, but there's so much commonality in the middle that we get along really well. Anyway, so she would work with my clients. I would bring her in to work on jobs, and vice versa. And then there were jobs we worked together. And then ultimately we did a Zoom Drain franchise, which went nationwide. When I say went, it still is, and it's growing. Very cool. And it was actually from one of my customers, Jim Cornetti, who was a client of mine. So we did that. It was great work. But she would privately meet with customers, and they go, "Why are you not doing what Al says you should be doing?" And one of them actually said it was very funny. It was a guy in the Midwest who's gone on to phenomenal success. It was about renaming his company. And this is before Dan Antonelli was even on anybody's radar. I would help with that and get the trucks, rebranded, because that's what happened at my company. Yeah. And so he hated his name. I gave him a name that really fit his personality and really was great, and a really great color scheme. And she goes, "Why are you dragging your feet?" And so I'm trying to think about how to clean this up. He goes, "Well, it's one less effing time that I have to say Al was right." So that's where the bracelet came from. That was Ellen's idea.
I love it. Is it actually a bracelet?
No, there is no. Don't go on Amazon looking for WWAD. That's blasphemous for me.
That's funny. But I picked that up from your book, read that over the last week, and really, really interesting. I've seen you around for I don't know how long we've been connected, but I've seen you from Tommy Mello's podcast. I've seen you, he talks about you a lot as being very integral to his success. And so I wanted to kind of start back, and you could give us a brief overview of when you basically gave your 3 years notice and what that was like, and why that was a thing.
Yeah, I always love to tell the story. So in a family business, I was third generation. It was started out of my grandfather's gas station in 1936. My dad and my uncle got back from the war, got busy building us into fuel oil heating. And for those who are not in the Northeast, that's really like propane heating, same idea. Yep. And then my brothers and I showed up in the late 70s, early 80s, my 2 older brothers. And I worked with them for all those years. But if you're in a family business, by the time you're 8 years old, you're doing something, whether you're cleaning fittings or working on the job site, or, so we always had a job. But went off to college, got an engineering degree, never practiced a day in life. And also, while I was at college, I worked 6 months a year. So when I was not on college, I was at work. So I built up a lot of time on my clock, and came at, I guess it was 3 years before I wanted to leave. And I wanted to go out because what had happened was every day at my shop, and tell me, guys, if this sounds familiar as any kind of contractor. Every day I felt like I got hit by a tidal wave. And when I picked myself up, the next tidal wave smashed me. And so that was the life that I was living. Now, to be fair, I was making really good money. Some of you guys out there have the tidal wave effect, and it's a bad money situation, which is double the jeopardy. Yeah. But I knew very early on in my probably early 40s that unless I changed my ways, I'd be a really rich, dead young guy. Mm-hmm. And that was not my goal. And so I worked to put the processes and systems in place. The reason for the art here that's funny, two of my greatest skills was sales and marketing. And the reason I got so well known for systems, the operating manuals, org charts, the training and building my own people from scratch and all the rest of it is because my team were experts at blowing up all of my good sales and marketing effort. So I had to stop and get them fixed so that I could get back to what I really love, which is sales and marketing.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean the show is Marketing Without Rules. I love marketing as well. I'd like to touch on the fact that you just casually said I was in my early 40s and realized I was going to be young and dead.
Yeah.
And so for all of us that are following in your footsteps, we still got lots of time. We just got to clean up our act and follow what
but it'll slip away from you, Lewis, and it's really heartbreaking. And people ask me, why do you still do this? If you I left at 48 and I really did not need to work again. I'd already put away money for my kids and the rest of it. But I felt that if you've been given a gift, and the gift was the great mentors that came in my life and the hard work that I had done with the right people, that if you're given a gift, you're obligated to help and give back. Now, I will say I got paid surprisingly. My primary goal of when I left was not to spend through my money, one. And two was I would stay married because I would leave my house and go out on the road periodically instead of just hanging out with my wife all day, which would have been very combustible. Not saying that we love each other and we're moving towards 50 years. So, but it would not have been good.
It's your version of heading to the golf course, right?
Yeah.
I love it.
I do play golf, but I could never play more than 2 days a week. Some of it is, Lewis, my back and my knees are a souvenir that prove that I actually worked in the field.
True. Yeah, that'll catch up to you.
It does.
Let's when people hear 7-power contractor, at least when I first saw it, the first few times, we think 7-figure contractor. That's what everybody thinks that they want. But 7-power contractor is a whole different ballgame. And it's a really interesting framework that you've laid out that really, really helps people get clarity. I wonder if you can walk us through that process, and you can kind of lay out what the 7 are, and then there's some I'd like to hit kind of in each category there with you.
Good. Let me share it. I'm going to go back, like most people who you asked a question, so I'm going to tell a story.
Yeah.
The 7 powers really mirrors when I would go to someone's home and they wanted to build a new master bathroom in their upstairs. Mm-hmm. And I would come to the door and, to give them a price. And I go, I need to go down to the basement. They go, well, that's not where I want it. I want the bathroom up in the thing. And I go, I totally understand that. But if the foundation can't support it, there's nothing I can do up there. So I have to start down in the basement. So what is the 7 powers? They're really the 7 building blocks it takes for any company. And I say that with great comfort in telling you that it's worked
and authority.
1 million to 250 million today. 1 million to 250 million today in industries that I was not in. I was in plumbing, heating, cooling, electrical, residential, commercial, industrial, because it'd be boring if you only worked in one of those segments. So talk about needing to justify, but I worked with a condo builder. I worked with a commercial photographer. I worked with commercial roofing people, a kitchen cabinetry. These are things I didn't do. Contracting is really pretty much all about the same, and you need that strong foundation. And I believed when I was young, and I'm talking about when I came in full time to the business when I graduated college. So I was probably 23, 24. And I thought, man, there must be 7 million things to do because I feel like I'm a pretty smart guy, but why am I not mastering this? And why is this such a mess? And when I finally settled that there are 7 things to do, it was a great comfort. And those 7 things are planning power, operating power, staffing power, sales power, sales coaching, marketing power, and then financial power. So there are 7 building blocks. And the importance for that is all of you listening. I feel bad for you. And the reason I feel bad for you is I felt all those years ago, decades ago, wow, there's just so much information out there. When what was I talking about? Trade magazines, webinars, seminars, and events, and then your network. Today, there are a billion events. You could live on the road and never be at your own business with all these events out there. And then if that isn't enough, there's so many social media platforms and so many people with a megaphone talking to you. And the problem has always been this. How do you know whether you're listening to a genius or an idiot? And that's really your challenge. The other challenge is not all information you get fits together. In the book, I refer to it as Frankenstein. And then I realized there may be people who don't know what Frankenstein is. So here's what it comes down to. Yeah, it's been lost in translation. But Louis, if I gave you the power to build your dream cars, what I share today is, would you start with a Ford chassis, Hyundai engine, Toyota seats? The answer is a screaming no. But that's what you do in your business. You pluck a piece from all over and try to make it fit. So using the 7 powers as a prism or a sorting bin, if you want, that's how you go. How does that fit into this planning? How does that fit into operations, staffing, sales, marketing? How does it fit into those boxes? And does it work with the other stuff?
It's huge.
That's my best recommendation.
I think in the book you mentioned like a 450 horsepower engine going into a Mini Cooper, and it's going to go real fast and real loud for a couple of feet, and then it's just going to blow up. That's what all of us as business owners struggle with. You mentioned back when you started, it felt overwhelming then, but there's so much information. You can, I think in the book you mentioned there's a guy who'd been like reading and planning for like 10 years, I think. Something crazy. And then he came to you and you're like, well, why are you coming to me for more information? He's like, well, it's not working. I need someone to, put all the pieces together for me. Yeah.
And it's easy to go down a road. There's this, what is it? 3 feet from gold. I think Tommy talks about that that's true. But if you're digging in the wrong direction, you're going to go 3 feet, 3 feet, 3 feet, 3 feet, 3 feet, and never pull back up. So there's a time to come back and reassess, plan ahead. And that's why the very first thing I ever did with contractors when I was doing one-to-one, which Tommy and the great Keith Pinkerton, who owns a huge electrical company in multiple locations in Alabama, Tennessee, those were the last 2 that I did. I finished them up in the end of December 2019, which was very fortuitous because I had already put my programs online. And a little thing called COVID would have destroyed my ability to go one-to-one anyway in the shops, because you certainly can do stuff in Zoom. That really transformed both of their companies.
You mentioned Tommy Mello. You just casually name dropping him. I've had him on my previous podcast, and what a fascinating person to chat with. I'd like to get him on this podcast as well. But I think it's pinning the man down now with everything he's got going on.
He's got a million things to do. It's really hard, but he, like me, we're very different personalities, but we hit it off really well because we appreciate each other and we say what we're going to do and then we go do what we said. The thing about him too is that he appreciates that he was given a gift. He paid for it, just like I paid for it, but his determination is to give back to others. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, people are always questioning, he doesn't need your money. He's got plenty of his money and he's earned every bit of it. People look at the end of the story, Louis. I remember, and by the way, if you're really young, this is going to sound like a long time ago, but to me, it's like an hour ago. I walked into his company in 2017, and this is not a story I'm telling out of tail here. he was 15 million in sales. So he figured out how to make the phone ring. The
Yeah.
problem was he was 15 million in sales and losing money. And so my job was to stop him from hemorrhaging first thing first, put the systems in place that we could start making money. So we got to 15 million and making a lot of money. And then he comes to me and we're not even working that long. And he says, oh, I'm going to be 100 million. And I had already known Tommy and I go, yeah, no doubt, but we're going to use these systems to get there.
Yeah.
And then of course he blew it away to where he is today, 250 million. And then he's going to be $1 billion. It's not even a question. Yeah. But the point about it is people don't realize the effort that he puts in, and it's time, energy, and money, right? The three things in the universe that you need to balance. I've worked with contractors, as you can imagine, from all over, and most of us really want to do it, but that's at least what we say. And periodically I've run into people who go, I really want to grow this company 10x. And I go, I love big dreams. So what are you willing to give up? Well, can't give up my yoga lessons, and I can't give up my surfing time. I mean, surfing. And I can't give up, and I can't give up. And well, it's going to be hard because Tommy gave all of that up. He drove 190,000. He never had a new vehicle. Everything I ever met him from 2017 to 2019 was a secondhand pickup truck with 190,000 miles. He was sleeping on a cot in one of the apartments that he had. He didn't own a house. Yeah. So when you talk about what are you willing to give up is what I'm asking all of you who are listening. It doesn't mean forever.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. It's been really, really interesting and inspiring watching the journey. And I was excited to ask you as a coach, because I knew Tommy would come up. I was excited to ask you as a coach, what was it? I mean, you mentioned that there, the willingness or the understanding that you have to give up, one of those things to get to where you're going. What was it as a coach that really stood out to you that Tommy just latched onto, or that he did well that allowed him to get to where he's going?
I hope all of you listening will take this the right way, but Ellen and I used to talk about is in our clients, there's some we need to pull back on the reins, and there's some we need to go to the whip. And it's much harder if I have to take the whip out to motivate you as if you're a horse. It's much better if I can pull back on the reins. And he was willing to do what was ego-dystonic out of his comfort range, which is I made him put some blinders on, which was very difficult. I took his phone away one day.
Really?
Yeah. One day I said, I'm here and I don't need to be here. So if I'm going to spend my time here, which is precious, you need to be here to get what you said you want. And at the end of my career, I had learned in the last 5 to 10 years of it, I had the client sign, this is what I agreed to do. And then I would sign, this is what I agreed to do. And then I said, we're both going to put it in the drawer. And when one of us drift, we're going to take it out and get back to why we drifted. And so I said, Tommy was looking at his phone. So I said, Tommy, put your phone away. And he didn't. So I got up, grabbed my stuff, and he goes, where are you going? I said, I've told you twice to put your phone away, and you have not. So now I'm getting up and I'm leaving. And he goes, I thought you were kidding. I go, well, now you know I'm not kidding. And he did. After that, we didn't really have to revisit and I wasn't trying to be cruel. It wasn't trying to be, but it was a good coach understands and my feeling too is I'm empathetic. Yeah. I may sound like, hard, but that's not really my core. I'm cheering for you. And Tommy is obviously very well known, but he's not the exception. I have a ton of people that work with me one-to-one have now made generational wealth. And all I can do is applaud because they did the work and they're very gracious about how the work helped them. But Louis, I prescribe basically the same information. I deliver it differently based on what you need.
Yeah. Amazing. I appreciate you sharing that. That's really cool to kind of, I hadn't heard that story before. With that setting, and saying, Tommy's not the exception. Sure, he's one of the more well-known students of yours. But with that setting, let's go back to let's talk to the contractor, to the business owner. Again, it doesn't have to be just contractors. You've worked with a ton of different ones, and I was reading the book and I was like, it was jumping out and giving me a message too as I went through it. But let's say we're just
I've worked with SEO companies.
Amazing.
Yeah, and the reason I had to work with the SEO company is because they were messing up the work that my client was done. And he goes, "You have to go down there and fix the company."
Yeah.
So I said, "Well, I'll go down and visit and we can do what we can." So a good example of what happened with this SEO company, because we are talking a marketing platform, had a lot of young kids doing a lot of great stuff, but nobody was communicating. And the processes were all complicated or supposedly known. And I go, "So do you have a checklist for doing the SEO or the pay-per-clicks?" And the two owners say to me, "No, we don't. We probably need that." And the kids at the table, I mean, kids 18 to 25, are telling me, "Yeah, we do." I said, "Great. Where is it?" "Well, it's 19 pages long." So I look at the owners and go, "Bad news, you don't know there's a checklist. Bad news for you is that it's 19 pages and no one can do 19 pages consistently."
Yeah.
But I systematized a commercial photographer.
Crazy.
She actually had to talk me into the job.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So we've got that business owner that's running around with their head cut off. They're trying to do the 7 million things. Let's start with the planning. You break it down really simply in the book. Of course, we could have a whole podcast about planning, but can you break that down simply for the listeners? The process of just whittling things down.
Basically, it just comes down to every one of us have a million great ideas. And as we talked about before, every next time you talk to somebody, you go visit a shop like we always did. We would go to somebody else's shop for 3 reasons. One is to discover something we weren't doing that might work really well for us. 2 was to see if something that we were doing was also being done there. And remember that when we get home, we should continue doing that. And then we would see something that was a disaster and go, "Let's make sure we never do that." And so there's always a reason to go to a shop to see that. The main idea was that we had too many ideas and ideas that never got implemented, which really just gets you nowhere, or partially too many started, 20 different projects that never came to fruition, and it takes the heart out of the staff. So we agreed to basically, if you read the book, you'll get the whole story, but we created this top of the funnel. Think of a funnel for a minute. The master project list is this 100, 125 projects that no matter how much money you have, no matter how big you are, it's really goal to be something done in 3 to 5 years. And it should mirror the goals you have for your company, which is gross profit, gross sales. What is it that you want to do? So those projects and habits, they're not just projects, they're habits. Things like steps of delegation, steps of corrective action. There's a lot of things like that need to be there. They go to the top of the list and they wait their turn. They come down the funnel for 2 strainers. One strainer's biggest problem, challenge solved, or greatest chance to grow and be profitable. And by that, they come down to a resting point called the top 30. And again, no matter how much money you have, how much big your company is, trying to work on 30 things at one time will just drive everyone insane. So you use the same filters again, and you get down to your top 5. One of the tricks that I actually learned from working with enough clients is they would put on the top 5 something like marketing. And the question that came up is, when will marketing ever stop? And the answer should be a screaming no. So it's not really a good way to define a project. It's better to say I'm going to do a direct mail campaign, because there's a start and stop to that. I'm going to do a LSA. I'm going to do something with Google pay-per-clicks, or a referral campaign, testimonials, things of that nature, where you can break them down so there's a beginning and end. So that's when you get to the top 5. And the top 5 basically is this. And I used to make them put it on a whiteboard. And I will tell you, the best of them still have a whiteboard. The whiteboard is not in their office. It's out where everybody's in the break room. And there's really 3 columns. What is it that you want done? The middle column is why you want it done. And the last column is, what is the status? And if your team says and sees the status never changes, they go same as always. Or if they never see a project or have it come off. So you can pick 3 pretty big things, pick 2 that'll go pretty quick, because otherwise it crushes your team's momentum, but it also is crushing on you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what planning power is really about. And the best way to remind yourself is there's the 3 rights. Working on the right thing at the right time, the right way, the 3 rights.
Huge. Huge. Can you just say one more time what the 2 funnels are, or what the 2 strainers
The
are
2
that
strainers
allow?
are, it either fixes your biggest problem and challenge. So your trucks are the wrong type of trucks. Guys can't stand up in it, can't stock what it is. They get an hour from the shop and they're missing one fitting because you don't have a model truck stock. So now we have to wait an hour for somebody to run a part out to them, and they're just sitting there doing nothing. That would be a big problem or challenge. Growth and what's going to do the best to grow our business and more profit would be cross-training somebody, or coming up with a better marketing campaign or referral thing, or things of that nature that would deliver more calls. Because even though there's 7 things I always talk about, ultimately it really boils down to these 2 things, and you will do it forever. So when it sounds short, be happy, be aware you're never going to stop, which is making more calls and more texts. But what do I mean by making more calls? It's a bathtub full of the right amount of calls from the right customer at the right time. And if you're any good, you've overfilled that bathtub to the point where water is dripping all over the floor. Because if you do, you get to decide what you charge, what kind of work you will and won't do, and who will you work for. The problem with the bathtub scenario, and why our CSRs on the org chart are under the marketing manager, is if your CSRs suck, your drain is wide open.
Mm.
And so a lot of times we blame our marketing company for the failures that your CSRs are incompetent.
Interesting. Interesting. We'll get back to marketing here. You mentioned having your bathtub, in the analogy, your bathtub overflowing with leads so that you can charge what you need to be profitable. Can we talk about the back of the napkin financial planning that you lay out in the book, around basically 3 simple calculations that tell you exactly what you need to be charging, based on your profit, and how many jobs you need to be, have coming in? So
working with Ellen, she really was, one that basically educated me, especially was next to her as well, about, I'm going to expose that I was not born brilliant. And I made every dumb mistake that you might think you are the only one who ever made. So we used to buy a motor for $30, paid you $30, and we sold it for $100. So we thought, oh, well, look at us. We got $60. And if you don't know about indirect costs and everything, which we didn't know until we learned how to build a budget so that you really know what you're doing, there's no exception for the need to know budgeting. And by the way, it's still very popular books. Ellen Rohr, R-O-H-R, by the way. It's Where Did the Money Go is the first book you read. And the second book is How Much Should I Charge? You read it in that order. And then you get to doing budgeting. Because at the end of it, think of baking a pie. If you don't put all the ingredients on the counter, that pie is never going to turn out right. That's what budgeting is really about. And so coming through the budget, the way I got clients to understand that they needed to do it is, you ask your accountant to give you your general ledger, all the expenses you had this year. And then you make whatever adjustments to it. Insurance went up, fuel costs went up, whatever those costs are, you make those adjustments. The middle column of the 3 columns is, what are you going to do different this year that you didn't do last year to put us in a better spot? Oh, we need more leads in this area, so I'm going to do a campaign in that area. I'm going to put billboards up in this section, or whatever marketing that I want to do, run a social media campaign. But it's going to take money, so that has to be in the middle thing. And if you add the first column, the second column, then you get to break even. So the third column is the gross profit you desire, because that's really it. People used to love to show me their financials. And frankly, I understand financials. I like to play dumb because it bores me to death, but I'm not stupid. The reality is it's also not what I'm great at. But when customers want to, or even people who speak to me in these free 30s I do, said, I'm interested in your gross sales and your gross profit. Before you show me 500 numbers, I don't care about any of them. If you don't hit your gross sales goal and your gross profit goal, there's no reason to look any further.
Yeah, it's huge and it's so simple. If you're listening after, just rewind that real quick or get the book, 7 Power Contractor. I read it on Kindle, but it's right here, 7 Power Contractor. He's
It's on
slowly.
paper for guys who are old enough and like to use a yellow highlighter. It's a very small book. When I worked with my editor, I told her I had probably 1,000 articles and blogs. And she goes, well, then why do you need me? I said, I have an audience of 1,000 of my kids, and they're all telling me to pick them. It's going to be a mess. You have to be in here. She goes, well, how long do you want it to be? I go, I'm dyslexic. Most of us are dyslexic. We got in contracting because people told us we weren't that bright. And so, we went to work with a toolbox. And the reality is we're slow readers. I am. And I want to be able that you read it in 2 to 4 hours tops, because my goal for you is to read it over and over again. So you can listen to this beautiful voice on Audible. You can do the Kindle like yourself, or you can have the paperback and then highlight it and do whatever you like. But if you're searching to get a good foundation, and I know it's my book and I am talking about my child, but I'm very proud of it because it's really helped a lot of people at least get the concepts to your head.
It's really simple. It's really straightforward. According to my Kindle, it took me about an hour and a half to read. It's actually interesting. So you mentioned I used to like the physical books too. In my old office, I had a big bookshelf in the background. And what I found is I would buy books and they would sit there for a long time and then they would just be there. And so what I've found with the Kindle is I can highlight.
Yellow, yes.
I can highlight and I can make notes. So that's what I did. Is I went through, I made notes of all the things I wanted to talk about, and then I can just go into the Kindle and see them all collated in one place, and it's so handy.
No, I think it's great. It's great. I actually had it funny because I worked with Matt Jones, Siced in Australia, is a podcaster, and he's telling everybody you have to buy the paperback. And I go, Matt, to send the book, this is from what Amazon to, it's going to be expensive. They can do Audible. He goes, no, they can't, because they have to use the yellow highlighter or what you mentioned, which is put the rest of it. So whatever way floats your boat, that's what I would recommend is always a really good starting point.
Yeah, really, really good. I mean, a lot of the content that we're chatting about is based on my reading the book and obviously hearing you talk with Tommy and whatnot. Appreciate you running through the financial side. I want to talk about meetings, and then we're going to get to the guru pig. I am one. So let's run through meetings, and then we'll talk about the next thing there.
Yeah. So the thing I always talk about meetings is my company. We didn't have meetings. We didn't have meetings, and we didn't have meetings, and we're in New York City Union Shop. We didn't have meetings till you, Lewis, screwed up, and now we're going to drag all of our people into a meeting, and we're just going to yell at you for the next 4 hours. We felt good. It didn't change anything. And really, the other reason why people hate meetings is what I always refer to is because they're donut meetings. And what's a donut meeting? Donut meeting is your school board, your town hall, or your house of worship, where you get to a meeting, you talk about stuff, and the next time you meet, you're going to be talking about the same stuff and eating another donut, and on and on and on. That is not the meetings that I'm talking about. And in my program, Signature Operating Manual System, in Al's Vault, it's all about the meetings. Ellen and I put together every meeting you need for daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly. But it's based on having systems. And it's really also based on the 10 meeting guidelines. And basically what it is you have to get rid of being PC, politically correct, where, well, if I don't invite Lewis, his feelings will be hurt. No, Lewis, if you don't belong in this meeting, you're not here. Because the people who are around this table have to have a stake in the outcome, and you have to be able to participate. And that means you're going to talk. You can't just sit there and listen. And so that's really a big part of this. Those kinds of meetings really make a world of difference, because when we leave that meeting, before we leave that meeting, we have action statements. Somebody's been taking notes. Those notes get sent out, and you need to sign off on them, because that's the accountability aspect of it. And meetings then become integral. Do we have time to tell a quick story?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I had a great contractor up in Vail who's done phenomenal. I came in, it was very contentious. So thus, it was them versus us when I first walked in. We got it to be really good. Anyway, COVID comes along. He calls me up and he goes, Al, I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden we're back to us being against them. And I go, well, explain to me what has changed. He goes, not much has changed. He goes, well, we stopped doing meetings because of COVID. I go, whoa, time out. I said, that's what builds and keeps the culture. He goes, well, we can't meet. I go, there's a little thing called Zoom. Get them all to Zoom meetings or do whatever you need to do in smaller groups and space, but you've got to get the meetings back in. And so I'm going to steal Serpro's line. He calls me up about a month later and he goes, it's like it never even happened. We're back to where we belong.
Wow. Very cool. Yeah, I think what stood out to me was two things. You have maybe three things. You have a person, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. You have a person who runs the meeting and is responsible for the meeting.
Yep.
You have
and
a person
agenda that people know what they're going to this meeting is going to be. In most of my meetings, there's always this set agenda. We have a very clear thing that we're going to talk about, and we don't let it get hijacked. So hijack is we're going to talk about uniforms. And Louis, you put your hand up and go, I got a question. Sure, Louis, what about it? Where should I be parking my truck when I get back late? And if you answer that question, the meeting is blown
you're
up.
off. Yeah.
So I'll tell you what, Louis, that's a great question. If it's not in your resource, I'm going to make a note here. You can stay with me later. But right now we're talking about uniforms. Anybody have a question on uniforms? And I get back.
Yeah, the agenda was a big one. Having someone to take notes that is not the person who was running the meeting. So they're responsible for that.
You can't do both effectively.
And then I'd love to hear a story on how the meeting culture or the culture in the company as a whole changed in a company that implemented the last one here that stood out to me, which was the meeting starts when the meeting starts and you're locking the doors.
Oh, yeah. That's actually Zoom, the customer that I ultimately ended up doing a franchise with him and Ellen. So this is 2005. He's come from the Air Force and he's wearing a sweater vest, really dressed right. And as I walked through the shop, I looked outside. The trucks are a mess. Inside the trucks are a mess. The guys are a mess. And there's 5 guys. And he says to me, Al, he says, we don't fly airplanes without manuals. That's why you're here. We want systems and manuals. And then he goes, and by the way, 2005, he goes, I'm going to want to, license and franchise that. So I looked slowly, turned my head side to side. I go, Jim, I have an idea. Let's start with seeing if we can get them dressed right and get their trucks cleaned up. And then we can talk down the road about licensing and franchising. Well, of course, the story had a happy ending. But part of the way along the story was in the technician manual, it tells you when the meetings are and that you have to be on time. So Jim is ready to start the meeting. He sees what times it is, and the guy is down the hallway, and he sees him walking after time, and he just kicks the door closed in this guy's face, not to let him in. And he starts the meeting, ends the meeting, and then he opens the door, and the guy is standing there bewildered, and he goes, I was just a couple of minutes late. And he goes, I hear you. Do me a favor, read on page 8 in the tech manual. What time does our meeting start? And he makes him read it out loud. And the guy finishes and he looks at Jim and he goes, I will never be late for another meeting. And he just said, for the rest of the time he was there 15 minutes early, constantly.
Wow.
And it sounds like a nothing, but it's a big thing because it happened at my company. And when we got dressed right and we held you accountable to the dress standards we all knew, because I would take a picture of you, Louis, dressed right. I spelled it all out. And then I had your truck cleaned exactly the same way it needed to do. I took a picture of you standing in your truck, and then I just wait. And the day that you and your truck don't look like it, I just take the picture out and go, Louis, how do you look like this picture? So you're off the clock, and you can get it straightened out. But in the future, you're either doing this or you're not with us, one or the other.
I think something that I've been realizing as a business owner, it's been a little bit visionary, let's say. That's the sexy term that we all say.
Yes, Tommy made me read Gino Wickman's Rocket Fuel. Yeah. Because honestly, Louis, I never even heard of the difference between a visionary and integrator. I was both.
Yeah.
And everyone I had worked with before meeting Tommy, so that was 15 years, I didn't care whether you were a visionary or an integrator. This is what we're going to do. The funny part about it was they had unconsciously either had a family member or picked a partner that kind of fit
complemented them. Yeah.
The problem with it is I had guys who had great vision, could see a million miles down the road where they wanted to be, but had no idea how to get it. They had somebody who was an integrator who could knock a block out at a time, but the visionary was going to the left and the integrator was going to the right. So my job was to bring them together like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful when it can work together. What I was leading to was being a visionary, the sexy term for all over the place and scattered. Fantastic job of building systems behind me. I've now got someone coming behind me and basically extracting that from my head. We're going to get to the guru pig here in a second. But one of the things that I've realized is I can't hold my team accountable if they don't have the standard that I think is what we need to be living up to. So if you don't have a standard for your guys of, hey, this is what your uniform looks like, this is what your truck looks like, this is the standard going forward.
Yeah,
it's objective. Otherwise, it's like, yeah, you just have nothing to go by. But if you have that standard there, like, hey, when we do a website, this is what it looks like. When we put a blog up, this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
Then they're not being a bad person. I'm not being, oh crap, I got to go talk to them. It's like, hey, so we didn't meet the standard. How are we going to fix that and keep that from happening again? And so it makes it so much easier as a leader because you're not, dancing around trying not to hurt people's feelings because they signed up and agreed to hold the standard when they jumped into your company.
It's one of the questions I always get is, how did you get this in at a New York City union shop? And I said, well, I told the story in the book that about Bobby, but basically they hated waking up every morning thinking they were going to work to do a good job. And then one of the four Levies would show up and go, that's not what I wanted. And what was that based on? It was just how we fell out of bed because there was nothing objective. Yeah. And so they hated that. And so we said, if you did what we have here and we don't like the results, well, then shame on us. We could change it. But today you're off the hook is what the famous line was. And they really embraced that big time. As a matter of fact, they sold it to the union delegate who was fighting me about putting it in the thing. And they go, oh, no, this goes in the contract because it's in our best interest.
This is protecting us from the Levies.
Yeah, no, it wasn't just the Levies. There were no shortage of people who felt like they were the boss. But the point of it was I was promising them a career, not a job. But how do you promise a career, not a job? And that's why I start with the org chart is if I can't fill this box, how do I earn the next box? Mm-hmm. So my first job is to own my box, 80% of what it takes in the objective that you create and making it objective with pictures, photos, videos, in words, all of those things. Really make it so that we can have an intelligent conversation about what is or isn't. And that is a much better to go from the objective versus the subjective, which is read my mind. And that was kind of like when we put it together. Now, be aware we spent $150,000 of my family's money back from the 90s. And we paid it off in 2 years, so we're not complaining.
What did you spend that on?
We spent it on, I had to hire my friend in who was an industry writer. And we had to run meetings, loads of meetings. Because he pointed out to me that you're not isolated. You interconnect
everything.
Like CSR, dispatcher, and tech, which was really kind of it. Actually, he was much more direct. He said to me, Al, I know you. I said, what does that mean? He goes, you think you can sit at a keyboard, type it all up, and walk out of your room like you're presenting the 10 Commandments, and thou shalt obey. And that's not going to happen. He says, we're going to do this way if I come on board. So he ran the meetings, and we agreed to come up with objective. We wouldn't leave a meeting till we had something objective. So we're doing this, and my brother Richie gets to a point where he goes, well, we don't need to define that. They can use their best judgment. And I let it slide the first time, and then the second time, and the third time, he says, and finally I just went up to him, nose to nose, and I said, their own common sense, Richie, or do you mean their ability to read your mind? Because you don't really want their common sense. You want them to have your common sense, which is not scalable. So spit it out or keep quiet. One of those two. And then we went out to lunch.
I love it. Talk about the guru pig. I self-diagnosed from your book. I would say I am a guru pig. Someone who isn't necessarily holding it close to my chest because I don't want the team to know, but I've just not made it a point to let the team know, and not through fear. That they're not going to do it right, and I've got to continually keep my hands in the mix and whatnot.
You're the magic man who makes it all work.
That's what we think.
No, here's my advice to you, Lewis. Don't ever get sick and don't die. Because I was running around with the same thing, and it was, there wasn't lightning that hit me and all of a sudden I got it. But it was a series of events that finally made me understand that I was addicted to the three things I talk about. Rescue. I loved riding to the rescue. I grew up on cowboy movies, and I liked, being a fireman. If you're a young boy, that's usually, especially in New York, you love being a fireman. So I loved coming to the fire. And here's the sneaky thing. If there were really no fires, I would unintentionally set fires so I could come put them out. Yep. But the worst one was the guru, which you're speaking to is, but unlike you, Lewis, Mars was much more New York sarcasm. So you don't know that, Lewis? Would you like to know? Because I know it. I'm happy to share it with you because you don't know it. Yeah, and when I would do that, I thought, to myself was, look how brilliant I am, how indispensable I am, whatever. And then I realized, okay, so now you hate them all because they're at your door, and now there's 70 people at your door every 5 minutes, and you're hating on them because it's really your fault because you hung on to this knowledge.
Yeah,
I'll make one clear one that is really directed to you. We had 24/7, 365. It was not like on a website. It was really, because again, we did commercial industrial where you can't go, we'll be there tomorrow. You got to get out there. We had crews that basically did that. But we did these big commercial jobs. There were really 2 people out of the 25 techs who could run these very big jobs. And one of them named Al Levy, and the other one named Rich Levy. So that meant you could wake us up, even though there are 4 guys on a shift late at night, because they're not equipped to fix it. And we were mad at them. But when Richie and I finally understood, talking about it, is we didn't tell them, how to check the fuel, how to check the spark, how to check the ignition. We didn't run classes with them so that they were more done. So they could welcomely wake us up. But ultimately, when we did do this, Richie and I could actually stay asleep. And when and if they called us in the middle of the night, we didn't even have to go to the job because we could know where they are already at. And a lot of it we could solve over the phone. This is before FaceTime. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the same thing goes for you. And for anybody, when we're having this conversation, when I say you, I'm going to go to the big you, all of you.
Yeah.
I understand it's what you makes you feel important. I understand it's what's special about you. And also understand there's probably never going to be anybody who's ever going to do it as well as you. Because first of all, they don't own the business. You do. So if you're looking for clones, like I said to my brother Richie at 2 a.m. when we finished up calls together, I said, Richie, you don't want a tech, you want a clone, and they are not coming. And Lewis, there's no clones coming.
No clones. Yeah, you talk about the 80%, like build a process that if 80% of it is completed. Dan Martell talks about this as well. 80% of done. 80% done is I forgot how he said it, but yeah, he basically says the same thing there.
And I also talk about perfectionism, because perfectionism is the real danger that we don't really speak to. Yeah. If we're the only one, the reason that many of us have risen to the top is because we are perfectionists. Good enough is not good enough. We're the backstop. When all else has failed, who's coming in to be the guy who's going to pick it up?
Yeah.
But it's a double-edged sword, because if I'm always in my garage building the perfect race car, your car is on the track already beating me.
Yeah.
I got to get out of
it. I looked up the quote here by Dan because it was I couldn't leave people hanging. 80% done by somebody else is 100% effing awesome. It's his,
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah. So empower your people. Al, this has been a blast. really appreciate you putting out the book, sharing that. Talk a bit about your online stuff. I know we didn't get marketing is a section of his book, so go get the book. I'm going to leave you guys hanging there because this is
I
a
did share
marketing.
about the bathtub, which is a thing they do. But one big thing about marketing, if you don't have a marketing plan in writing, you don't have a marketing plan.
Yeah.
Let that soak in. It's really about a marketing plan, and there's really 3 elements. Marketing budget, which is fuel in your tank. Marketing allocation is what are the 3 main drivers. Doesn't mean it's the only 3 ways you go to market, but it's time, energy, and money are spent on those 3 drivers because they have the biggest impact. And here's the one that you all miss, because I missed it for years, is a marketing calendar that's populated backwards through the year. If you're like me, busy, phone goes dead, I pick up the phone thinking something's wrong with my phone. It's too late to get your marketing moving. You've got to have that in the stream already.
Yeah. It's you can't you can't start once things gets quiet. It's 90 days at least too late at that point.
That's why working backwards through the year minimizes that for sure.
But and here's the thing, Al. I found the rest of the book so impactful that I think people need to go pick up the book and read, because marketing is like one of the last things that you hit. You talk about getting
and
everything
there's a reason for that.
Yeah,
because you're already on fire, and if I teach you marketing, I have taught you how to put more gasoline on your fire. You follow?
Yeah. And then if you're putting gasoline on a fire and trying to deal with it with a broken fire truck, you're not going to get very far. So go read the book. But you also have the online stuff, which basically is a 90% complete blueprint for someone to build out an operations manual. Talk about that a little bit for people. And obviously
so the first program is Signature Operating Manual System, SOMS. And that's on my website. If you go to products, so the website is the number 7 powercontractor.com, number 7 powercontractor.com. There's a lot of great information. Again, I know it sounds bad because it's from me, but it's time tested. And there's a load of information in blogs. I put a lot of stuff here to help you. Having said that, yeah. But as far as if you go to the products, there's the book. It's a great place to start. But Signature Operating Manual System is the org charts. There's 3 types of org charts. You need a box chart, depth chart, flow of communication. And then how do you cover the boxes is well-written operating manuals that don't try to cover 100%. They try to cover 80% so that your staff can get empowered. Otherwise, they're just going to be standing at your door or on your phone going, got a minute to the day you die.
Yeah.
And then that leads to the second program, which is Signature Staffing, because some people won't follow you the whole journey. Staffing is like a train. Some people hop on, some people hop off, some stay forever. You won't know. But while they're on the train, it's your job to get them able to fill the box and start earning, if it's possible, to go up. So Signature Staffing System is the second program.
Very affordable, given what I know of trying to build those things without getting outside help. You're just going to spend a long time and probably never get anywhere.
$150,000, and mine was a fraction of what's in this program.
Yeah, crazy stuff. Well, Al, thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your nuggets. Again, I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning. You don't look a day over 25, so I don't know where you get the 48 number, but you certainly have shared a lot with a lot of people. Thank you for pouring into me tonight and those listening. Guys, as always, go back and find a nugget. This one we didn't hit marketing as much on purpose, because I think that everything that Al brings, you need to get dialed in before you really hit your marketing. I've said this before to people coming on as clients. We're amplifiers. We can't create a fire, start the fire for you. You've got to start the fire. You've got to get your foundation in place. But if there's nothing you do but this one thing, go grab Al's book. This isn't a promotion that I get anything from, aside from potentially helping one person, because I read through it, really enjoyed it, was impacted by quite a few different things that I'm going to be implementing in our business. So go get the book. It's a quick read. Took me an hour and a half to read through it, and I'm no world-class speed reader. Go do it, read through it again, listen to the podcast here, and go take action. So there's a quick and easy action step there for you from the show. Al, appreciate you again. Guys, we'll see you on the next one. Talk soon.